Something that's always bothered me about job searches is that it feels like I'm stuck in a toxic relationship.
Yeah, for real. I mean, you're putting in so much effort into your crush, but they're just not giving. You send them a risky hire me please text and they just ghost you out of nowhere. And like worst of all, right? You see everyone around you is just going on these dates with their firms and you can't even get a text back. So you start to wonder like, what am I going wrong? Like what's going on?
We were also in your shoes during our final semesters of the year, watching everyone getting snatched up and getting super stressed about how to secure a job opportunity. Well, today we will share our stories and experiences in dealing with these certain situations with you.
So pull up LinkedIn, get your firm pickup lines ready, and let's in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Welcome back to the Curtain Podcast, everybody. I'm your host, Ryan, with my co-host,
Albert, just Albert.
not Albertosaurus Rex this time.
yeah, yeah. When I went to Georgia just recently, I was chewing a lot of gums.
Did you get any peaches while you're down in Georgia?
Uh, no. Justin Bieber would hate me, but yeah, no. Like how when you're driving or you're driving road trips, like you're like trying to stay awake, so you like chew gum, like eat snacks and stuff like that. I am notoriously bad with like whenever I eat something or chew something, my tongue gets hurt really bad, and so like I have like I don't know what it is. Like my tongue
Just
is
mindlessly chopping away.
yeah. Sometimes I bite on it. Sometimes like the chips just like start grazing on it. Like I have cuts in my mouth. It sucks.
The worst feeling in the world is like when you have like a tortilla chip or something, right? And then
Yeah.
it like slightly angles and it hits like the roof of your mouth.
Yeah.
Oh my, yo.
Yeah.
Honestly, I'd rather just take a razor scooter to the shin than have that kind of thing.
Does that feel like similar to when you bite on a really hot pizza and it's like this cheese stuck on the top of your roof?
I would say no because you have like something stabbing the roof of their mouth versus like, ah, shit, this is hot. And you can just like spit it out if you have to.
Yeah, makes sense.
Phew, okay. What else do we need to catch up on? Hasn't been too long. I mean, you missed the last episode, which was big sad. Had a solo mid for the first time in a long time.
Yeah.
I haven't had a solo mid since League of Legends days.
Yeah. I had to go on an event for my mom, and she got her NBCT award, which is basically the national board certification. So basically now she is getting more monies for being able to teach students in high school in a more she has expertise in chemistry, and so they're paying her for her expertise.
So she's officially her.
Yeah,
She's her.
yeah, she's making big monies because people need her.
Bro, that's exciting though.
Yeah.
Sweet. So what does that all mean then? Is that like effective immediately or how does that work?
Oh, this is her second time now. So there's 3 tests, and so with each test you get more and more money and more expertise as you go on. And so she just finished her second one and she's trying to finish her third one.
She all the way leveled up. She ranked #1 platinum.
Yeah. Something like that.
Well, sweet. Okay. Well, before we jump into everything else for this episode, really quickly, I just wanted to share some news for the industry. And don't worry, it's not going to be the boring news. We're going to try and explain this fairly complicated thing in as few words as possible. So get ready for this. It's about to be a big train wreck, right? So the AIA, our big old umbrella organization, right? The American Institute of Architects. They've been releasing a lot of these reports about the ABI. And before you freak out and don't know what any of that means, it's the Architecture Billings Index. What that means, few words as possible. Client paying firm monies for project. Okay, are you following along so far? And the whole how you look at this chart, if the score is below 50, bad. If the score is above 50, good. So if you'd like to look at the big old chart of the timeline, right? If chart go down, equal you're fired. Chart go up, equal you're hired. So if you take a look at this chart, it'll have it on screen. Since like July of 2023, big down equal big bad. There's been less project, less money. Okay, as we go closer and closer to today's date, we see chart go up equal good. So that means there's a lot more opportunity for you guys who are looking for jobs right now. A lot more firms are starting to get more projects and a lot more clients paying for those projects. So, TLDR, if you're still looking for a job, chances are you're going to be in a good spot because most firms now, as we're seeing from this chart go up equal good. Means means firms have a lot more projects and need a lot more people to work on those projects.
Yeah.
So, that's kind of the premise that we wanted to start this episode with, just to share the news and share like some,
There's a
good
light
news for you guys.
the,
There's
at
light at the end of this tunnel.
yeah. Yeah. It's basically like if the index is high, right, which means that clients are paying the firm monies to do projects, and for the firms to do the project, they need to hire people to do the project. So which means that if the number is high or trending higher, you'll most likely find a position within that firm to do the projects that they're trying to do.
Exactly. So this is all basically to say we're actually in a pretty good spot in the industry right now. There's a lot more people actually following through with projects, which means compared to like when Albert and I were just graduating, you can see in the chart there, like there's big bad. And we were still able to find something. So
Yes.
if we see chart go up equal good, you guys are in a much better spot than when we were, theoretically speaking. So
Yes, sir. And so
that's what we just wanted to start this episode on.
Yeah.
Before
Don't
we
be
get into our
worried.
stories. Yeah.
Don't be worried.
You guys got this.
You guys got this, and we got you. It's okay.
So now that we got the boring news out the way, and you guys are now a little bit more informed of what's happening at the industry, at least, I think we should start with maybe explaining a couple scenarios, because it's going to be a little difficult to cover all the pages, all of the different bases. So we're going to try our best to paint a few different scenarios and see, hopefully, that these are fairly relatable to what you guys are going through as well. And then, again, like we said in the intro, we're just going to explain a little bit more of like our experiences, our stories going through a lot of these instances and what we've learned from it and maybe what you guys can take from it too. So let's start with our first question, right? So let's paint the scenario that you're the person who's applied to like a billion places so far for like an internship role or maybe a full-time designer position, but you haven't heard back from any of them. How do you go about it? Like, do you have any stories that we can share, or what do you do?
It's weird because, like we said in the intro, it feels like a toxic relationship where like you're essentially from what I understand is that you're shooting your shot at all these different firms that you want to be part of, and you're trying to hear back from them, but they're just not texting you back. And
It's so frustrating, dude.
You start to think that, am I doing something wrong? Is there something that I am doing that's like making me not seen within these firms? And it makes you super, super stressed, right?
It's even more frustrating when you're sitting in studio, right? You're doing your thesis or whatever final project for the semester while you're applying to all these places, I'm guessing. And you're just hearing like left and right, maybe every couple days, like someone else from your studio, like, oh, I just got a job. You're like, great. But shit,
You want to be you want to be happy for them, and you are happy for them. But then you start to like think about your own situation, and you're like, dude, this don't feel good. I hope those numbers go up to more than 50% right now, because I need the jobs right now.
Right. But yeah, it's just like.
I was just gonna say something like, how do you go about them trying to email you back? I think it's more of like if they, like you shoot your shot in all these. If it's a numbers game, right? Let's say you shoot your shot to 50 firms, but
That's a lot.
yeah, that's a lot. You shoot your shot at 50 firms, but you only hear back from 5. That's 10%, which is a really low number, but that's what's so
Relatively
important
speaking,
about
that's
the
pretty
numbers
high.
game, right? Yes, it's a really high number, but because if you start to think about it in a percentage way, it makes it look so small. But the idea is that it's a numbers game. If you shoot your shot in all these different firms and you start to hear back from them, you are going to be in a really good position. So if you don't shoot your shot, you're not gonna hear back from them. And if you do shoot your shot, make sure you shoot shot in a lot of them. It's a numbers game.
Okay, I just thought of this question actually because well, thinking a little bit retroactively of what you just said, I remember in the heat of all of that, applying to firms, everybody in your studios applying to firms at the same time, you would hear some people would be sending shots to firms like 20 in a week or something. And then I was not even doing anything close to that. I might have been doing 2 at the most or something. And I couldn't figure out like what was the right number to do, because again, like what you're saying makes sense. It's like it really is a numbers game at the end of the day. If you're trying to hear back from as many firms as possible, you literally have to cast as wide of a net as you can. But it also it's a little frustrating because if you're very particular about where you want to start off, that narrows your pool of people you want to apply to significantly, especially if you're trying to only go to one specific state, or you're trying to go to only one specific city or whatever. That makes it even smaller and smaller and smaller. So it can get pretty frustrating when you add more and more filters, I guess you could say, on top of your application process. So I guess long-winded question being, how many firms did you find yourself applying to per week? Because I think for me, it was probably no more than 2, maybe 3. Because I was just so busy with studio at the time. I trying to finish a portfolio, trying to go through I hate the process of applying to places. It's just like, anyways.
It's so stressful, and it's so time consuming, and it just sucks in general because you're doing the same thing again and again. It's like, what is your name? What is your first name, last name? What's your address? Put your resume here. But since you put your resume in here, let's type it out this time.
God, I hated that so much. Why does it exist?
I don't understand why they ask for a resume as a PDF, and then later on in that same application, just one block or one page down, it's like, now put it down as this is a fill in the blank. What's the firm name or that you worked in under?
Yeah.
What did you do? It's like, why do the
Maybe
resume
just
thing?
look at my resume. I don't crazy question. The document that you have me prepared that shows you exactly the questions you're asking me. Maybe you might want to look there. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't understand why.
It just takes so much time. That's why I only did 2 per week, because I'm like, it's so dumb. Why do you spend so long doing these processes? Yeah. And I try to get a little bit smarter with it, and I would just have my resume, but then I would make a separate Word document eventually that just had basically like a copy paste of my resume, but in the Word format. So that way you could just copy, paste into the text box and move on.
Yeah, and then what's also super effed up is the cover letter. It has to be super unique to the firm, right? And you're trying to figure out, what do I say? Because this is the first time I've seen this firm.
You are the most beautiful firm I've ever seen. I love the projects that you did. It made me feel like this. I would love to put my dedications and work towards your firm.
Will you go to prom with me? It's just the whole situation is just the most toxic thing. But to answer your question, how many firms I applied to per week, I would say in total, I think I applied to 70 firms within that 1 week. But what the thing was that every day I would apply to 10 firms, but that was only for 1 week. Yeah, I only did it for 1 week. And so if I don't hear back from that 1 week application of the 70, then I would move on to the next week, just do 10 more. And yeah.
Dude, where'd you have the time to do 70 applications in a day or in a week?
Like you said, it's there's things that that they'll ask. So the resume, you just type it down on Google Doc, copy paste it. So you have things that there's shortcuts to doing things so that you can actually do it faster. And it just sucks because I think for me the longest time were just the cover letters, because every firm is asking for a cover letter. I don't even know if they're gonna read it. It's
probably not.
And so I'm typing these cover letters and I'm trying to make it feel that super unique to that specific firm and what they do, and that's what takes the longest for me. So that's why I did it for 10 for 1 day, and it took me about, I want to say between 15 to 30 minutes per firm. And so I would never really hit 10 firms to apply, but I would try my best. And so in the end it would be roughly 70 firms that I applied to within that 1 week. But
Maybe we do a post on that because that's a pretty spicy little process right there. 70 firms in a week. Hey, that sounds pretty good on the carousel.
dude, there's some people that do way more than me. I'm just
Yeah.
I don't understand how they're doing it.
There's also got to be some AI thing that you can use nowadays. It's a little bit above my mental pay grade, so I haven't looked into it yet. But it seems like it's going to be even more necessary nowadays than ever used to be.
Yeah.
This is one more thing before we move on to the next part. But it's a little frustrating too when you're doing resumes, when you're doing cover letters and all this stuff, because nowadays you basically are having to compete with a computer first. It has to pass through all of its filters, and then and only then will it get shown to a human, right? So you think about a firm, because it sounds frustrating, right? But there's a reason for this. If you're a firm and you're saying, hey, we're hiring, here's the list of things that we're looking for, have at it, you might actually get like close to 1,000 people applying to the same position, depending on how big the firm is, obviously.
Yeah.
And no way is anyone going to look through 1,000 things in the time that it takes for them to need to hire somebody. So they put these systems in place where it will have a robot automatically scan through people's resumes to identify this person is irrelevant to the job we're hiring for, so we'll throw them away. And then these certain percentage of people actually fit the criteria, let's pass them along. So in that, this is just from what I've heard from other YouTube videos when I was doing this whole process. But you basically need to copy the whole list of like what do they call that? Like the job description? And you need to do a whole bunch of different processes. You can even do this in ChatGPT. There are some YouTube videos that tell you how to do this, which pretty nice if you ask me. But it's like, take this job description, here's who I am and what I do, and reformat it to be like hyper specific to this job description. And then it will take your resume, it will take that job description, match it up so that you have the best possible chance of making it past the computer scan. So then the funny part
That's
is
big
you're
brain.
writing a resume to appeal to a computer, but you also have to make sure the resume appeals to a human because that's like the final boss. That's who you have to really impress. So it gets even more frustrating because there's so many extra gates and hoops they have to jump through nowadays
Yeah.
that I don't think you really had to deal with back in the day.
Yeah, I think, yeah, it's so messed up because you're doing it authentically, right? Like you're trying to be as authentic as you are to apply in these firms. But then when you hear back from these firms that like they're having AI sift through all the applicants, it sucks. But that's just how it is right now, and
It's the game.
it really is. And so I don't know. I applied to like 70 firms, and I think I like heard between 5 to 7 firms back. And so 10% is like I think that's like the average most like most people.
Yeah.
You hearing back from 5 to 7 firms, that's a pretty good amount actually.
That's really good, yeah.
Yeah.
Because
But
I think in
it's-
my entire process, granted, I probably didn't apply to anything more than now that you're saying it, 10% probably checks out because I think over the whole course of things, I probably applied to maybe 30, maybe 40 firms overall in the span of like 5 months, maybe. And I think I got interviews and responses back from about 4 to 5 firms overall. So yeah, 10% might. I'll have to look into that.
Yeah. And
Maybe there's some statistics to that.
So if you haven't heard back from firms and you're starting to wonder why, what I did back then was, this is also for portfolio, but I asked someone to review my portfolio who they were hirees for firms, and the thing that they said was that my portfolio is really nice, but it focuses too much on words and less on the images themselves. And so I had to like really reformat my portfolio, and then from there I started hearing back from firms because of it. And so it takes another perspective from like a hiring perspective that you might need to try to see if you have any connections or something like that, to see if if your portfolio needs a makeover or something like that.
Going to the next point, it's like, what do you do if you haven't heard back from them? It's kind of like the most immediate answer that comes to mind is like, you probably want to try to like email them back or something, or try to send follow-up emails. But then how do you keep in contact without being too annoying, because that was something that I know from my stories and everything. I was always way too nervous to keep messaging firms because I just felt like I was just being way too annoying, because I mean it's like the sending a whole bunch of texts to your crush all the time. It's like, bro, you're being needy. Like, you're triple texting right now. You need a
Yeah. I think that's so true. I've been there before. It's like you want to hear back from these firms that you like. These firms are the places that you want to work at, and that's why like you really want it bad, and you try to follow up. Hey, I haven't heard back from you in like a week or so. Do you have any updates? And it's
Right.
like you just feel needy when you're doing it.
It's so gross.
I get the ick like talking about it, and like it's just disgusting. But I don't know how like I think like you just have to get over the fact that sometimes you just do need to email them. Hey, do you have any updates on the application or something like that? And if like you haven't heard from them, then it's their loss. You're a really good designer, and if they don't want to talk to you, then that's a loss on them.
I'll say two things. So Abby actually said something that I liked hearing a lot, which was the squeaky wheel gets the oil. So if again you think about the whole bunch of firms are getting 500 applications a day or some crazy number, right? The one that keeps emailing them consistently, like every other day or something, they're probably gonna have the biggest chance of getting a response versus the person like me who was waiting like a week in between to send emails sometimes. Of course, they're going to forget about it because the inbox floods before the day's over. So it's a very difficult balance between the whole how many do you send versus whatever. It even gets back into the whole like texting strategies where it's like, no, you got to make sure you give like that 2-hour window before you text back. Otherwise, they're going to be too needy. But then it's like, but what if I miss her opportunity when she's not there because maybe she's off at
Yeah, it's such a toxic.
No, trust me,
situation.
bro. 2 hours, okay? 2 hours works.
Don't triple text, but in actuality, triple text.
Triple text.
Yeah, I think like what I did before was like email them like every other day, and because they're busy, they're doing projects too. They have a life, and
Oh, I was going to say, on that too, this isn't for every office. Some of them are larger. They probably have full teams dedicated to just hiring people. But some of the medium to smaller firms, the same people who hire people or look for candidates are also working on full-time projects. So they have to also schedule certain windows in their time to schedule interviews with these, prospective employees, and also spend time to talk to each other about, hey, how is this candidate? How is that candidate? Who should we hire? So they're trying to cram a lot into their 8 hours of the day. So it's not too crazy to think that they probably don't have enough time to look at everything every single day. So it might be the case, for example, like what Aber was probably about to talk about. If you send something on Monday, they might not even get to that email until Wednesday or Thursday. So it gets deeper and deeper in the inbox the less frequently you email them back, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And majority of these people who are the hiring, for at least for the architectural positions, like the designer positions like that, not the internships, these people are like principals, and these people are handling like 15, 20 projects at a time, and they're just so busy and trying to coordinate everything as well that you it might take some time for them to reply back to you. But again, it's a numbers game.
I was going to say, the other thing that I was going to mention too is Albert was saying it too. It's like, you're a great designer. If you don't hear back from a firm, then you need to know like, hey, all right, I'm just going to go somewhere else. In the glorious words of Swoozy on YouTube, shout out to that guy. It's like, if you don't choose me, you lose me. I ain't nobody's plan B.
Yeah.
I love that. I want to get that tattoo. Not just kidding. But
Yeah,
it's a really good mentality to have. It's like, know your worth. If you know for sure that like, hey, this portfolio is really good, my resume is really good. If these firms aren't responding back, then you gotta keep moving on and trying to find a different firm, even if it sucks and that was like really one of them that you super badly wanted to work at. You just gotta be able to know it's like, hey, okay, clearly this isn't going anywhere. I gotta go talk to other firms then, because I can't just be sitting around for a month waiting for a response.
Yep. You gotta choose yourself over these firms, and that just shows that you are so valuable and you are a really good designer.
You're a high value person.
Yeah, you're a king or queen, whichever you are, and so just treat yourself like one, and don't settle for these people who don't even want to talk to you.
So we just talked about the scenario where it's like the person who's been applying but hasn't heard anything back. I wonder if we now start to paint this scenario where maybe you're the person who is just starting to get some interviews here and there, but like you haven't kind of heard back from them for a little bit, and you just got like another little situation happening with another firm, and then now you got this love triangle situation going on between you and two other firms. So how do you navigate that kind of thing where you really like firm A, you've let them forever, but then firm B out of nowhere is kind of like, hey, they're kind of nice too. Yeah. And they're both texting back and forth, emailing here and there, and being like, I really like your firm. Oh, I really like your firm too. Yeah. And then like, hey, want to set up a second interview? But then the other one's like, hey, we might have an offer for you next week. And you're like,
yep.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, what do you do? What do you do?
I had this actually.
Uh-oh, spill the tea.
Dude, I applied to this firm in New York, or it was New York and Connecticut. Ryan's heard about these firms, but
I've heard all the tea. The cheese may is in my blood.
Dude, so I applied to them. We had an interview. It was really great. The interview is like the vibes were just there, and
the first day went well.
We were flowing and stuff like that. So like I'm trying to get a second interview because that's typically how it goes. Like the first, when you're doing a designer position, you first interview over online about vibe check type of thing, right? Mm-hmm. And then from there you do another vibe check. You go to their firm and actually in person. So like for me, I would have to go to Connecticut or New York, and then be there in their firm and just vibe out the place, and they vibe me out as well and see if that goes well. So after the first interview, I did not hear back from these firms that were really good. Like these firms
Did they ghost you?
Yes, they ghosted me, and I was like, what the and so but then this other firm swoops right in. She's like, hey, I want to get to know you. I was like, sure. So we go on a firm date. Goes well again. And they're like, okay, we need to interview a bunch of these other people too. We'll get back to you in the next week. You don't hear back from the firms that you want to do. So like the ones in Connecticut and New York. But the next week you do hear back from. I heard back from this one
first firm.
Yes, and I was like, oh shoot.
They texted me back. The feelings are back.
They like me, and I'm starting to like them based on that date and interview. And so, where was I getting to this?
Did you make them say, prove it? Where's the money?
Yeah. And so they offered me a offer letter, and
both firms or the first one?
The one firm
the second
approached
one.
me. Yeah, the second one. The one firm that approached me, they offered me like a position and all this other stuff. And so so I emailed back the firms that I was looking into, New York and Connecticut. I was like, hey, I just got an offer. And I had this feeling that, like that the New York and Connecticut firms were just like, they're also looking for people, and they had offered.
They were texting some people on the side.
Yep, they were They had offered a position to a candidate already, and they were just trying to hear back from them. So I emailed them back, and they were like, "Hey, sorry, we're looking at this other candidate right now." And what was it? Regret to inform you. Email. That
dreaded. Oh, you regret to inform me. Sure. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but all in all, to say that I think the reason why you might not be hearing back from these firms that you want to be at is because they have a side. They have a side that they're trying to hook up with, and
it's just it's how the game works. The same way you're looking at a couple other firms, well, they're kind of looking at a couple other employees too.
But yeah, that was the story. And so eventually I accepted the position from the second firm because I vibed with them, they vibed with me, and they treated me like not as a side piece. I didn't want to be a settled they didn't want to. I don't want to be.
You were the main hoe.
Yeah, I am the main.
Yeah. He was the main. Yeah. I was gonna say I have something Not exactly the same, even though like I did have a fern triangle situation thing too.
Yeah.
But there was a moment where I kind of want to touch on this because it ties back to the first scenario where it's like after weeks and weeks, if not a couple months now, of constantly applying to firms, doing interviews, and not hearing anything come from those things, and then finally that one point where got the response back to say, hey, we love your stuff, let's set up an interview. I'm like, cool. And then have that whole first thing where it's like the online version first goes fine, go get a response email saying, hey, if you want to have a second interview with you in person. So then I had to drive all the way to Kansas City to
From
do
Omaha,
this in-person thing from Omaha.
Yeah.
So then this is some pretty big investment stuff now. So they're like, ooh, we're getting kind of serious. So
this man actually went there. This man is getting serious.
Yeah.
He's getting committed right now.
Real, yeah, for real. So then it's like, man, this is like, it's been a while since the first date, this is pretty exciting stuff. So after the whole interview goes pretty well, have lunch and everything afterwards, I remember driving back to Omaha from Kansas City being like, I have a strong feeling they're probably going to offer me something. So then I was trying to process it in the whole like 3-hour drive, trying to figure out like, just after considering the dates and everything, like what's the vibes like? Like, do we really like these people? I'm like, you know what? I think it's pretty good, but we'll have to see where like the numbers lie. So I remember just kind of waiting around to hear that email back, and then finally like the great moment where it's like you see the email pop up from the firm saying like, we have like news for you or something, and it's like, here's our offer letter. Like, oh shit, we did it. Yeah, all right, great. After months and months of sending out something, we finally got an offer for a job. This is
We're
great.
exclusive.
They said, you want to be exclusive? And then I looked and I'm like, but those numbers, I don't know about the numbers though. So then it got kind of to that point where it's like a lot of mental games. There's like, dang, I've been waiting so long for this moment to just like have an offer letter, and like seeing so many people in studio get their offers and accept them, and then now I'm finally presented with my offer and everything, and I'm like, now I'm having like these gut reactions where it's like, man, I don't even know if I like want to accept this one, which is so like scary because you spent so long just trying to get one, and you're contemplating just rejecting it right there, like, man. So like, what do you do? So then it was just one of those moments where like, whatever it was, just call it a gut instinct, call it like a sign from the universe or whatever, but just like, I have a feeling that I might be able to do something better, because like what they were offering for the firm was pretty fair, but for what I was hoping to get with experience, with qualifications, and just like knowing how much student loans I was trying to pay back, I couldn't really finance a lifestyle that I was looking to get with what they were offering. So I had to make the very difficult choice of saying, you know what, I think I'm going to have to just let this one go. It was like, it hurt. It stung so bad because it's like, dang it. I had it in my hands and I just let it go.
It could have been the one.
It could have been the one. It's the one that got away for a while. Until later down the line, not even maybe more than like 2 months later, then I've got another round of interviews with a different firm. I'm like, oh, this is great. Good. I'm glad that like this didn't go horribly wrong, and now we have like a second chance at this other firm. And then, crazier enough, got another firm that was now in the pool. So now I was back in that triangle situation again. So I'm this is crazy now. For like months of nothing happening to letting one go to now having two firms back on the table again. It's like, this is crazy. Like, who would have ever thought?
He's a high value man.
It only took time for them to realize it. God. Not kidding, but it was just one of those things where I like telling that story just to say, like, even when you are like you finally get this thing, if it doesn't feel right to you, again, it's up to you to choose what you want to do. But it's just, it didn't feel right at the moment, so it was scary to let that offer go past. But at the end of it, I'm happier to have passed on that opportunity, because a better one had opened up down the road, like maybe not even 2 months after that. So long story short, sometimes like being patient is key. Even when something comes right in front of you, it might be best to even like pass on it if it's not what you're looking for.
You gotta find your soulmate.
Facts.
It doesn't even have to be a soulmate, really. But like,
just like a really good match.
Yeah. It's
your high school sweetheart.
These are all analogies, but that must have felt good, huh?
Yeah, because again, it was just like, again, just think about like how frustrating it is when you're looking around and you're seeing months go by without hearing anything from these firms. Even though you think you're doing the best with your interviews, you think you're making the best moves on your portfolios, and you think your resume is really good. You've even gotten professors to say, "Yeah, this is great. Keep going." It's just like, then why isn't it working? Why is it not coming? Like, why am I not hearing back from people then?
Yeah.
Like, what's wrong with me? Why is it not working for me?
So Ryan, we've both been in firms as interns, as designers, and all these different things. Do we both have insider information about what firms are looking to hire? Do you have any tease on,
Like
you know,
how the
from
process
previous
works?
firms, the previous firms, how the process worked?
I mean, again, from hearing from other friends who have told me about their experiences from being in firms before, like friends who had graduated and everything, they've gone back to me and told me about their whole like, oh, by the way, we didn't know this is how this worked, but this is kind of how this thing works. So from what they were telling me, basically, it was like sometimes, and we kind of talked about it a little bit earlier, but sometimes it is that case where, especially after the career fairs and everything, they already got their list of like 10, 15 plus people or something, right? So they're going through that list and like ranking how they think the talent displays across all those candidates, and they're approaching those ones like in order of talent, basically. So when it's flipped over on the student side of things, when you're emailing this firm and you're trying to wait for these responses, like kind of like what we talked about before, it seems like a lot of these firms are also in that process of like hitting up person 1, person 2, person 3, interviewing them and waiting for the best responses. And if they all found a job somewhere else, they're like, ah, dang it, they got away. So then they move to the next order.
Yeah.
They go somewhere else. The next order, they go somewhere else. And they're like, man, all right. So long story short, it's pretty reciprocal. It's like the way you feel about firms is the way that firms are also dealing with like their employees and stuff. From what friends have told me, from what they've seen behind the scenes. So I'm assuming that's kind of how this works. It kind of makes sense in my head, but I don't know.
It makes sense. That makes me think about if as a person that had applied to that firm, right, and that firm got all these rejection letters from the people that they wanted to hire. Now your time is opened up. You get
your shot.
And so don't miss your
Not gonna
shot.
throw away my shot.
Yeah, which means that like they're always just going to be trying to find new candidates as well. So stay vigilant in your search.
Yes, because eventually it will happen. It might just take 8 months, but it will happen.
Oh God.
Yeah. I think another really important thing we can talk about too is while you're still in these searches, like again for the scenario B, this even works for scenario A that we talked about earlier too. I think a really good rule of thumb or just good practice is every single month while you're still in these job searches, you should probably be refreshing your portfolio and your resume once a month as you're going through these things. Because not saying that it is your portfolio or your resume that is a problem, but wouldn't you feel better if you were always making it better each month, so that way you know in your head, like, hey, what I'm submitting to these firms now was better than what I submitted to firms last month or 2 months ago. Because then it's kind of like extra reinsurance on your conscience where you're like, okay, I know for sure that I'm throwing my best, my absolute best work in front of these people. So when I'm constantly refreshing this, like once a month, maybe even twice a month, if you're that kind of crazy for it, but it's basically just like peace of mind, knowing that you're giving the firms the best you can. Because the worst thing is you're just giving them the same portfolio that you've had from third year or something if you're in like fourth or fifth year. And like, like it might be a good portfolio, but technically speaking, that's also like 2 years out of date or something, right? Or even like a couple months out of date or something. Or maybe you haven't even added your best projects to it yet or something. Because there are some people who like really do sleep on their portfolios. Like they just don't take them very seriously, which is like, you really should, because that's how firms know what you're about, what you do.
Yeah.
Resumes are cool for a lot of other industries, but most architects, I don't know this, I haven't hired people before, but I think most firms are like, they just look through and they're like, okay, they kind of have some Revit experience. They kind of have like a couple internships back in the days. Okay, cool. Anyways. And then they look at the portfolio like, oh, that's a cool
Yeah.
rendering. We could use some people to help us render. Or,
Yeah.
oh, they really understand details. We need people for that. Boom, you're hired.
I've also heard that like the firms don't really care to when you're a beginner. Firms don't really care how much experience you have because in the end
That's a good point.
they want to mold you to their firm, and so that's why they want you to stay within that firm and take care of you and that type of stuff because they want to invest on the people that they care about, and
Because it reflects better on them too. Like even in the case if you were to move firms however many years after working there, right? People get to talk on their resumes like, oh, I used to work at this firm. And like, oh, that's like, so when they see like how talented you are, they're like, oh, they came from that firm. That's why a lot of firms, at least like talking to Albert's point, I think that's why a lot of them are eager to invest because it looks good on them when you are this talented person in the career force who has quote unquote learned from them and gotten so great at what you do.
Yeah.
So the other part of that too, I think that Albert was talking about that I would like to explore just a little bit more is the whole resume thing. You brought up a good point. I think the resume really starts to become more relevant in the architecture industry or just design industry in general when you have more years of experience on your belt. Because when you're just an entry designer, like most of us listening to this podcast would be, everyone knows that you're probably not going to be all that valuable to a firm realistically. Like if you're not going to be able to stamp any drawings, you're not going to have any idea how a whole like design process works for the firm. You're barely going to know how to use Revit the way that they use Revit. So it's kind of like they're taking a big gamble and like hiring these new students just to kind of fill in the gaps that they need other people with more experience to focus their efforts on.
Yep.
So the resume comes a lot more once you're like 3 to 5 years experience and stuff. That's when they want to look at that because like, oh, they've been in the field for quite a while, so they probably know a lot more than someone who's a new grad or whatever. Because different years of experience come with different levels of responsibility to firms. So that's kind of why it's still relevant, but I don't think it's that it has that big of a priority over how a firm sees you when you're a new grad.
Yeah, true. Yep.
At least in my opinion. I
That's
don't
why
know.
you need to
I'm not a
work on your
professional life
portfolio.
coach, so
This man has all the information. He's the encyclopedia of
it's
architecture.
all in here.
But like I
Oh.
think that's why it's so important to do your portfolios, right? Because as a starting position, like the junior designers or just like starting designers, they don't really care about the resume as much. They just want to know if you do know certain stuff, and if you're based on your portfolio, if you can think.
Yeah. I would take a big gamble at saying that most firms, if you were to like place money on what they look for when they're hiring people, it's your personality, your skill level with certain programs, and your ability to think creatively, if not just problem solve very effectively and work very efficiently. Those are like the big 4 things. So if you can somehow during your interviews explain to them that those are the 4 things that you can do, you probably have a pretty good chance at getting hired at whatever place, or at least getting reached back out to for second interviews and so on and so forth, right? So one last thing before we move on to our next thing is I just want to stress the importance of LinkedIn. I don't think it's seen to a lot of people quite yet at how valuable LinkedIn can be. I'm not saying that it's the end all be all. In fact, most people don't even have anything on their LinkedIn's to this day.
Me.
Edward.
That was me. That's me. I'm just
so-
dry as hell with LinkedIn. Like the only thing I think the most recent thing I've uploaded on there was just my portfolio. And before that one was like a watercolor thing. And before the watercolor, you didn't see anything from a year back. It's just so my LinkedIn is barren. It's like the desert with no water, and like you see the tumbleweeds just rolling by.
And some people might be like, why is it important? Why is LinkedIn important? The way that I view it, at least from my opinion, I think it's more of a reflection of you have put in extra work compared to other people. If you can show that you've posted a few things on your page at least that are original content, not just reposting something from somebody else's thing, it shows that you are proactive in your job search. And compared to, let's say like in the comparison game, right? Like a firm is choosing between you and somebody else. If somebody else's page is Tumbleweed Nation versus your page that at least has like, here's my portfolio, here's a a screenshot of me presenting on my final project for the semester, then firms are going to be like, oh, this person actually has something on their page. I feel like I can connect to them a little bit more versus the Tumbleweed Nation page, which is just looking for work. So let's pick the next scenario, right? So now you've actually heard back from a firm. You get these offers, but kind of like my situation, it wasn't quite what you were imagining or hoping for, right? How do you deal with that scenario? Because now you're getting to the icky realm of where you have to like start to negotiate for yourself a little bit more. Now you got to start to like, ooh,
set your boundaries.
Like, do I actually want to work at this firm if it means I'm only getting that much versus like I've heard this friend gets this much and I kind of want to get that number at least. So it's like, how do you start doing that? Because now you're talking about like some confrontation a little bit now, or like, you know, you got to start speaking up for yourself a little bit more, and that could be really scary. So what did we do?
Oh, I don't know. Wait, do you want to talk about your situation first? What did you do?
Yeah, so I already talked about the whole like letting that one offer go past. So I'll talk a little bit more about like the firm triangle. So that one was, again, it was a pretty lucky scenario in terms of the timing. It was the case where I was talking to firm A, let's say, right? Talking with firm A, got the first interview over Zoom or something, and then they wanted to schedule an in-person interview, so I had to drive all the way from Omaha to Kansas City again. So
Damn.
that whole thing happened, and it felt like that went pretty well too. But probably in between interviews, I think I was also talking with firm B, who was at a place where I knew a few more people that were working there. So in between that, it was kind of interesting to see that perspective of like leveraging connections versus just, you know, random, like the random process, I guess you could say. And it just came down to more or less of like after interviews and having like the big timelines between each other, I finally got an offer letter from firm A. But I was also really, really, really wanting to hear what firm B was going to offer. Because, again, that's kind of where I knew more people from and everything. So that would be, like, a slightly better experience, at least from, like, a completely third-party perspective on everything. So I'm like, how do I, like, I want to hear what firm B has to say. But, like, how do I get them to say it, you know? So I remember I was listening to an episode by Open Plan Podcast, actually. Shout out to you guys. And they were walking through the scenario, like what we were describing. Like, you just got two offers, what do you do? And they were talking about this idea of, like, if you get an offer from firm A, but you want to hear an offer from firm B as well, it's actually pretty common practice just to email firm B and say, hey, I just got this offer from a firm. You don't say how much. You just say, like, I've been presented with an offer and was wondering if you guys have reached your decision yet. So that way you put the ball in their court, and now it's up to them to be like, oh, like, do we want this person as badly as like another firm does, and whatever else. And this is actually like a really perfect scenario because it usually benefits you the best because you can now leverage one firm wanting to hire you and another firm wanting to hire you, and you basically have them fight over you.
Yeah.
So it feels pretty good. It's like, ooh, shit, I'm kind of like the hot thing right now.
Yeah.
But so you send that email to the firm. You'll wait for them to get back to you. So then what usually helps as well is with firm A, you ask them, when do you need to have an answer by? And that's really important too, because you have to tell firm B, hey, I've been presented an offer. They want to hear a response from me by this date. Let's say it's like
Now
10
they're
days.
time
Right.
ticking time
Exactly.
bomb.
So then you say, however, I'm very interested in your firm and what you guys stand for, and would love to be a part of your firm as well. So I'm wondering if you've reached a decision. I would like to hear like an answer from you guys before making a decision. So then it puts you in the case where it's like, hey, I want to give you guys, firm B, I want to give you guys the chance to say your piece before I go and accept firm A.
Yeah.
And usually what happens is if they truly want to hire you as much as they have claimed, then they'll usually be able to match that date and at least give you some type of phone call or something to say like, hey, we're wanting to hire you, but we're in the process of getting things from corporate or something.
Yep.
So best case scenario possible. And now you're just positioned with the case of like, which offer do you like best? And you know, this is a big controversial thing because many people are uncomfortable with sharing how much one firm is offering versus another one. And I don't know quite the right answers to do that too. It really just depends on like what the firm culture is like. If it seems like they're pretty chill and laid back and just want you and not just like hiring for the case of hiring,
Yeah.
you can operate these things a little bit more loosely or something.
Yeah.
But sometimes you do have to ask for specific numbers and be like, I was hoping for something closer to this range if they don't meet a number that you're looking for. And then based off of that response, then you can kind of tell like wherever they're willing to budge or not. Because that happened with me. I was talking to firm A, and in the whole like application process, they asked like, what kind of salary are you expecting to have? And I put my number, and then they came back and it wasn't that number at first, which is like, okay, cool. Like,
Was it
makes
lower
sense.
or?
It was lower.
Okay.
So I was like, okay, understandable. Like, you know, that is what it is. Like, I'm just a new grad, so, you know, it makes sense.
Yeah.
But then firm B had said, we're going to pay you like X amount more than what firm B was or firm A was willing to pay. So I'm like, that's a significant jump. So then that's when I had to go back to firm A and say, hey, listen, I've been approached from I can't even remember what I said at this point. I just remember saying like, I've been approached by firm B and was hoping if like, are you able to meet this original asking price basically? And then the firm came back and said, no, this is as high as we're willing to go because we have to make sure we have an equity like salary between all of our entry-level employees. Very like honorable thing. I appreciate that for that firm. But that just made that decision a little bit easier to make at that point too, because it's like, well, okay, they've said that this is the highest that they're willing to go, and they said, look, we're also not going to chase you too. Like this, we're putting it out here. We want you, but this is all we're going to give you.
Yeah.
If you have a better offer somewhere else, then like, you know, respectfully, like, have fun over there. So that's what I did. I had fun over here.
Yeah. And sometimes I like with my case, I did the same thing, but sometimes you just get the regret to inform you letter instead of the you know, the type of stuff. And so it's not all like the happy-go-lucky type of situation most of the time. Sometimes you do get the really bad news, and you're like, oh dang, I really want to be in that firm. And but like, you know, it's nothing personal. It's just, you know, they're trying to see who the best could fit in their firm, and you know, just happens to be the candidate they were looking for was the one that they connected with the most. And so that's okay. Like, you know, if would you want to be in a firm where you got settled? But
you were the backup plan.
Yeah. So it's not all bad.
One other thing too, I just wanted to say this just as an additional way to like negotiating salaries and everything. Not everything always has to be the salary. You can also negotiate for different perks, such as like, hey, I noticed in your like your, what do they call that? Your benefits package that you only give, I don't know, like 3 weeks of PTO. Is it possible that you can give that to 4 weeks or something, maybe? If like you value time off more than like the salary, let's say. Or maybe you want to say like, oh, can I get like a moving bonus because I'm having to move from one city to another, and like that would really help.
That's exactly what I did.
So that's kind of like some additional things. So like, let's pretend like you have like offer A is $5,000 less than offer B or something. But if you can say like, hey, I really want to go to firm A, however, can you give like a moving bonus just to help like move or something?
Yeah.
And then usually like, even though it's not really meeting the 5K boost or whatever that you're hoping to get, at least you have like that in cash, so you can actually use that money right away to help move if you're like broke fresh out of college. So those things also play into mind on how you can ask for negotiations. And again, this podcast is not anything close to being a job help desk. So like this is all just like from personal experience, and by no way are we even qualified to talk about this stuff. This is just like what I've heard and what I've experienced.
Yeah.
So
with the travel expense thing, right? So I applied to a firm in Utah, and they got back to me with an offer letter, and I'm in Maryland. And so we never really talked about travel expenses or anything, if they can give me money for travel within the interview that we had. So they emailed me an offer letter, but the offer letter didn't have any travel expenses within the benefits package or anything like that. And so I emailed them back. I was like, thank you so much for the offer. I have a question which I forgot to ask in our conversations, and wasn't in the 2 documents you sent over email. Does blank offer any help with travel expenses? Blank. And so the firm emailed me back, and they were like, "Hi, Albert. We don't typically pay for relocation expenses. However, given the distance of
However,
your move, yep. Given the distance of your move, we'll offer you blank to help offset the expenses. This would be included in the blank.
right.
And so,
The offer.
yep. And so, like Ryan was saying, it doesn't necessarily have to be the what's it called, the renegotiation of the salary. More with my case, it was more like relocation expenses and stuff like that.
Right. And again, that's just like a glimpse. We're no means any type of professionals at this thing. So take everything that we just said with a grain of salt. But
Yeah.
that was just like to help you guys think there's a couple other avenues you can explore if you're really getting down to the numbers of like firm A versus firm B. And one more thing I will add to this too is, again, sometimes like your gut will tell you better than numbers will. And in my case, this didn't necessarily happen because the one that I ended up did want to choose, that was also luckily the higher paying firm. But there were moments where like I remember even talking to a friend about this for a while too. I was asking her all the time where it's like, I kind of like the culture at this other firm better, but like this other one's also paying better, it seems too. So then it was kind of in the head where it's like, what do I actually value more? Because there's monetary value, but there's also the value of just happiness of working at a place and just knowing that you're gonna have a fun time wherever you go. And those were also things I was considered because like an extra like 5,000 or so. At the end of the day, like that's going to taxes, So like, is it really that big of a deal if like you're gonna go to this one place but you'd be like maybe less happy with the other one or something? Like these are all just things that you have to like think about and try and project into whatever your future scenario is going to be. And sometimes you can be pleasantly surprised. Like again, with my case, I think I just got like super lucky with where I'm at, where like I was anticipating the culture to be one way, but it was actually like way better than I thought it was ever going to be. So it's kind of one of those things where it's just like, sometimes it really is just the luck of the draw. And like I was saying before, sometimes patience can really like pay out in ways that you don't even think about until you're making a podcast about it a year later.
Yeah. That makes me think about like the offer that I got from one of the other firms, but because I came into the interview thinking that, I saw from their website that they do all these like really cool cultural, historical projects, and so when I went to the interview, I was wondering if those were the types of projects that they were doing. But the specific office of that firm, that specific office only did stadiums and the sports designs, and I was like, that's not my thing. I didn't say this in the interview, but like internally.
Imagine. Hey, the big thing that you guys do, I'm not about it. But can I still get a job here?
But it was one of those offers that I had to balance because I was like, it's a really like the projects that they do are amazing, but I didn't want to do stadiums or sports design, and so it's one of those things where I was just like, I have to let this go because it's not the thing that I want to get experience in.
Sometimes letting go is the hardest part.
Yeah.
Well, okay. Is there anything else that we have not really covered before we end the episode?
I think that was it.
I mean, we covered a pretty good range. Let's think back, because we talked about if you're applying and you haven't heard back, what can you do? We talked about if you got an offer and you're just trying to figure out how to navigate that whole thing. And we've even talked about like if you got 2 offers and like or more, and how do you balance those things and stuff. I'm trying to think if there's any like this is for the comments to tell us, like, what did we miss? We might do, like, a part 2 to this thing. So, yeah, we'll leave it to the comments. We'll keep you guys to help us keep accountable for ourselves. To be what did we miss? And let us know so we can do better next time. Yes. So, other than that, I think let's just end with the final takeaways, yeah?
Yes, sir.
Since you've been gone for so long, I think you should go first.
Okay. So, I think to go back to the very beginning, right? The ABI.
Before we get started with the real episode. After an hour long.
Yeah. This is from my own experience as well. If you're not hearing back from firms, I think that maybe there might be something wrong with how you're presenting yourself through your portfolio and resume. And so I think it's also important to take a third perspective to see what you can do better. And with my case, it was a portfolio type of thing where was super like text was a big part of my portfolio, which it didn't need to be, and so I had to reformat my portfolio, and then I started hearing back from firms. And so maybe it's just a small thing like that. I know it's not a small thing, but a small thing of like in the grand scheme of there's a lot of things that you need to do. But with the just reformatting a portfolio or something, or reformatting your resume of some sort, maybe that's the thing that will click in place for you to start hearing back from firms.
Yeah, just updating your stuff. I think my big takeaway for the episode would just be pretty much like just know your worth, right? Know what you're looking for, and don't be afraid to hold out until you find what you're looking for. And again, different times call for different circumstances. If the chart go down equal bad, you probably can't be as picky as if chart go up equal good. So that's just like a big disclaimer right there. But if you have the luxury of being able to hold out and wait for like the quote unquote perfect type of offer for your needs or something, don't be afraid to hold out on that, because that at the end of the day, that will make you more happy than quote unquote settling for somewhere where you're not so happy with it or something, you know? So just keeping that in the back of your mind.
Well, thanks for listening to this episode. Make sure you follow us on Instagram at Kirtland Podcast. And let us know if we missed anything from this episode. Stay engaged with our Instagram because we do care.
Also, if you guys found this episode to be interesting, you might want to go back and watch through with our career fair episode, because that also tells you some other things you can do before you're even getting to this job searching phase, how you can make an impact at the career fairs and everything like that. So if that sounds interesting to you, make sure to check that episode out. But otherwise, I've been your host, Ryan, with my lovely co-host,
Albert. Just Albert.
And that's all for this episode. And we'll see you guys in the next one. And also, don't forget to save.
Don't forget to save.
Okay, ciao. Bye.